All right, and we are live with Mr. Austin Hubbard. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, man. Just hanging out, enjoying my free time. How you doing?
Awesome. I'm doing well. Have you healed up from any injuries or soreness that you had in your previous fight?
Yeah. Luckily, I wasn't, too sore or anything. I had a few bumps, bruises, nothing too serious. Yeah, I'm feeling all back to normal.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good to hear. I know you like to stay active, so obviously
Yeah.
health is very important. Were you able to catch any of the UFC 261 fights this past week? And
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
what was your takes?
Really, man, the whole card was awesome. I especially, when you get that main card and all of them are finishes, that's always a fun night. Everyone loves that excitement, that violence, those finishes. So it's always good when it works out like that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can't remember a fight card like that where there's five finishes, and actually, if you count the Randy Brown fight on the end of the prelims, I mean six straight finishes,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
all within 2 rounds. It was crazy exciting. Um,
yeah.
yeah, so there weren't a lot of lightweights fighting on that card.
No,
No.
no. I don't. Maybe like one or two. I don't recall really.
Yeah, maybe on the prelims, but
Yeah,
yeah, there weren't a ton of lightweights. Otherwise, I'd ask you how you thought they looked. But
yeah.
so cool. Yeah. So one of the questions that I had for you that I always wonder, because I see UFC fighters and they always have the nickname when they're showing them in the introductions. Your nickname is Thud. How did you?
Yeah.
How did that nickname come to be? I mean, I can assume, but I don't want to.
Yeah. So I got that nickname as an amateur. I think it was my second amateur fight. And where I was fighting for cage aggression a lot in the based out in Iowa in those days. And the ring announcers or commentators, from me kicking the guy and making the noise like a thud noise, you know what I mean? And they started calling me Thud in the commentary of all my fights. And then when after the fights get released on YouTube for people to view and whatnot, everyone just started calling me Thud. So I stuck with it and I just embraced it, and yeah, now it's my nickname.
Cool. Yeah, it's always nice when you don't have to think of the nickname yourself and the fans sort of give
Yeah,
it to you, right?
yeah, I would never like give myself a nickname, you know what I mean? Like I I don't know, to me it seems a little corny or cheesy.
Yeah.
Um I never even planned on really having a fight nickname, but like I said, the commentators started calling me Thud, and then next thing you know, everyone was calling me Thud. So I was like, I guess if I that's the one that sticks, and I was given through the fans and commentators and whatnot, I'll roll with it.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So you mentioned fighting in Iowa, and I know that you're sort of, your hometown is in Illinois, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Yep.
And now you're fighting out of elevation down in Colorado.
Yep.
What's it about the Midwest that's keeping you in there? Did that factor into training at elevation? Obviously, you're around so many great influences, coaches and fighters there. I'm sure that you pull a lot of insight. But
Oh yeah.
what made you choose elevation as a fight camp?
Yeah. So I've been with Elevation Fight Team for 5 years now. I've been living in Colorado, 5 years. Um, I'm from a small town in Illinois, Sterling, Illinois. Not very big, like 15,000 people or so. And when I started MMA, it was basically kind of just a hobby, something to do. My goal when I started fighting wasn't I'm gonna make this my career and I'm gonna make it to the UFC and all this other things. I just did it because I love doing it. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until I was a pro and I was 4-0, that I was like, you know what, maybe I can do this as a career. And I loved training. I loved, competing. And I've grew up doing a bunch of different sports, and there's nothing like MMA. It is so next level, you know, as far as competing in that sport and everything else that goes into it. And like I said, I just really enjoyed the process and everything. So at 4-0, early in my professional career, all finishes, I was like, you know, I'm gonna really take this serious and, you know, try making this my career. And at that point is when I picked up and moved out to Denver, Colorado, and that was 5 years ago, like I said. And I went out to train there for a week before I moved there, obviously. And at the time I wasn't thinking too much of it, other than it was just going to be a training trip. I got there and just everything felt right. It was actually my first time being in Colorado, obviously first time training with that team. And I've traveled and cross trained at a few different gyms, you know. But everything about Elevation Fight Team, just it felt like home, you know what I mean? It felt right. Training partners, you know, the coaching, the city, everything about it. I just loved it. So like I said, I picked up and I moved out there, like, you know, 3-4 weeks later or whatever it was, and been there ever since.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a great fit. I mean,
Yeah.
I've gone through, you know, I follow a lot of your coaches on Instagram and whatnot. And they seem to absolutely love you, man.
Yeah.
Which is great. So, you know, your UFC career has been really interesting to me because you've been really, really active in the UFC, really, really
Yeah.
active overall as a fighter. And you've had, you know, you've had ups, you've had downs. I think the most notable fight that you were involved in was your fight against Max.
Yeah.
And it was really, really interesting. And I think it got a lot of press afterward. A lot of UFC fighters, you know, go into the pre-fight conferences and say, oh, you know, I'm going to, you know, break my opponent's will. I'm going to make them quit. You know,
Yeah.
they're going to wish that they weren't in the octagon. Very few fighters actually have that experience happen
Yeah.
where their opponent no longer wants to continue mid contest.
Yeah.
You know, not because a referee or a doctor, like literally on their own will. Um, what was it like to have an opponent quit mid fight? I'm sure it was shocking and probably a little flattering as a fighter.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, it was different. It was something I've never, you know, experienced. At the time, I didn't realize he quit. I thought the ref stopped it. I wasn't, you know, entirely sure what was going on, you know what I mean? I knew I was, you know, taking it to him pretty good. And I thought maybe between rounds he just couldn't go again. Like I didn't realize he was like, no, I don't want to go again. You know what I mean? Until I was doing the interviews and they told me, no, he quit. I was like, oh, really? Like I didn't realize that at the time. So in my head, I was just in my mind, I was gonna finish him for sure in that third round. You know, first round, it was a good round. He came out, you know, he had some slick sub attempts. I defended, got back to my feet, staying active on my feet, and you know, breaking them down, doing a lot of body work. And you know, that second round was even worse. A lot of kicks, a lot of more body work, and it's just staying active, staying in his face. And then, you know, third round coming, and in my head, I'm like, I'm finishing him this round. And then he didn't come out, you know, and the fight was over. And I was just like, well, you know, at the time I didn't, you know, I was happy I got the, you know, technically it's a TKO finish.
Yep.
Um, you know, it's just how it went.
Yeah, I'm sure it was surprising because I heard you say something
Yeah.
in the post-conference fight where you were like, that is it didn't even occur to me that you could do that as a fighter because it's just not in your vocabulary
Yeah.
to quit. You're like, you know, the coaches or the doctor or the referee would have to stop it for me. Like, there's no way I'm
Yeah.
out. And we've seen that with a lot of fighters recently. I mean, the most recent one is obviously UFC 261 with Jimmy Crute. I mean,
Yeah.
he can barely stand and he wants to keep fighting. So,
Yeah.
um, Yeah. So it was really interesting to me, very shocking to me. And I do think you would have gotten that finish in the third round. Your fighting style is very poised, and something that I think the commentators have taken on to a lot, that it seems like you intentionally start a little slow, to not blow out your gas tank, and to
Yeah.
feel your opponent out. And then, the second and the third round, you really start to put it on your opponents. Is that sort of something that you just inherently do, or is it a strategy that your coaches work with?
Yeah.
Because you see so
No.
many fighters, gas
Yeah.
out or start slow. I'm just curious if that's something that you consciously think about.
I think part of the problem was, with the slow first round is before I got to the UFC, almost half of my fights before getting into the UFC were 5 round title fights.
Hmm.
Um, I just got so used to a 5 round pace, that first round is more of a feeling out round, you know what I mean? And it's been a bit of a struggle for me to adjust to the 3 round pace because it's definitely different. It's something I've focused on a lot, is trying to be real, more intentional, more in their face, more active first round. Um, and I knew he was gonna come out very strong. It's his debut. He's excited. He took it on short notice, so I'm sure he knew he needed to try, finishing it as soon as possible. Um, I just I'm comfortable, uh, you know, keep fighting, you know what I mean? Like, even if I lose a round, to me it doesn't matter. We got 2 more. I'm gonna win those ones. So I'm fine with adversity, you know what I mean? Like, you're not gonna win every second of every fight, for in a perfect world, yeah, you can, but I'm mentally prepared to, you know fight back in any situation. There's been plenty of times, where I've lost the first round, come back second, third round, yeah, I'm fine there. So um it's not something I do intentionally, but it's something I am focusing on reducing that, and trying my best to not lose the first round. So it's just how it works out sometimes.
Right. Well, from my perspective, in a 3 round fight, if it's even, if the first round's really close, or if you do think that you maybe lost the first round, I would imagine that it puts a little bit of pressure on you,
Yeah.
knowing that, you have to win the next 2 rounds or you have to finish him. There's
Yeah.
really no margin for error there. Do you feel pressure when you go back and you think, maybe the first round was questionable, or maybe it's a 10-9 round for them?
No, I like I said, I'm confident in my conditioning. I'm confident in my abilities. I feel I'm a very mentally strong athlete, where I'm not gonna be broken mentally by possibly losing the first round. I'm not gonna get down on myself over it. I'm gonna adjust. I'm gonna pick it up and continue to fight. I feel like I'm just kind of cursed in that sense of, it does take me a round or so to kind of wake up and adjust, and start taking just getting comfortable, really. It takes me a little bit to settle in, and once I'm comfortable and settled in, and I'm good, you know what I mean? I know I'm gonna start getting off, I'm gonna start winning the fight, no problem. So, and that's generally what happens. But like I said, I need to, or I have been, focusing on a lot. Not, you don't want to give away rounds. Not that I'm giving them away. I just sometimes, like I said, that's just how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you do mention that. I mean, you've fought on numerous occasions, guys making their UFC debuts
Yeah.
on short notice. And I imagine that they come out, with tons of nerves,
Yeah.
a lot less experience, and they just
Yeah.
want to try to get you out of there quick, or
Yeah.
try to, solidify that first round. So they just have to win the second or the third.
Yeah.
You know, has that experience with Max and others, did that help prepare you for when you fought like Dakota Bush? Similar situation. He came out, you know, looked really sharp. I mean, in my opinion,
Yeah.
first 2 or 3 minutes, and then sort of fizzled out, and you know, you controlled the fight from there.
Yeah, you know, the biggest thing that's been very beneficial to me in my career to this point is uh so losing that Joe Selecki fight, and then I was off for 8 or 9 months. I had an injury, had to have a surgery, and then, you know, just a whole slew of challenges and setbacks, you know, leading up to this fight in particular. And you know, it challenged me mentally for sure. Um, and training was kind of the only thing that was like helping me stay, you know, happy and positive, kind of holding it together, you know. So I was real determined to fight for, you know, multiple reasons. Uh, like I said, from that last loss coming into this one, the biggest thing I learned was, you know, I needed to be mentally there fight night. You know what I mean? I did a lot of work with a mental coach. I did a lot of reading or listening to audiobooks on my own, you know, in that 8 or 9 months, and really focused everything, you know, to be ready to perform fight night. And that's what I felt like I did, you know. That was part of why I was so calm, you know, between rounds in the fight. Even, you know, when he was coming out hard in the first round, um I was ready, you know, mentally I was ready to fight on fight night. And that's something that, you know, leading every day, I treated it like it was fight night. In my head, I was envisioning fight night. You know, a lot of times in the past, you know, a lot of fighters, whether they admit it or not, they, you know, it's pretty, uh that first, like, the for me anyways, the fight before and all the way up to like that first 2 minutes is of your fight is like the worst feeling in the world. You know, I hate it. um and I think because I hated it, like the pressure, just the nerves, everything, you know what I mean, all rolled together, like I kind of blocked that out, you know, for the longest time. uh and that definitely cost me some fights, you know, which I think was also part of the reason uh I started slow in more than a few fights, just because mentally I was always looking past the start, you know, the walkout. I was thinking about when the fight was over, and those types of things.
Mhm.
And like I said, I really zeroed in on the pre-fight, you know, the fight before, the warm-up, the walkout, the start of the fight. And outside of that, I didn't think too much past it, because uh for me, that was the most important, you know, focus for me. So it didn't matter who I was gonna fight. You know, I didn't watch any film on Natan Levy. I didn't watch any film on Dakota Bush, going into those fights. I I was just ready, you know what I mean? And it didn't matter who was out there.
Mhm. Well, you mentioned being mentally there, and I know that a lot of fighters have expressed that they've had trouble being mentally there, and
Yeah.
that you know they are that the lead up to the fight is actually the worst part
Yeah.
because of the pressure.
Yeah.
Um, One person that's been really outspoken about it, and you've probably, you know, another Colorado product, you've gleaned some insight, was Corey Sandehagen. Was
Yeah.
talking about his fight with Aljamain Sterling and how he wasn't mentally there and he couldn't get
Yeah.
going. And Aljamain, you know, capitalized on that and finished him really quickly. And since then, he mentioned that he's been, you know, working with a mental coach, as you mentioned, and
Yeah.
he's talked about how beneficial it's been for him. Obviously, he comes back and he, you know, spinning wheel kicks Marlon Moraes and
Yeah.
flying knees, you know, Frankie Edgar into another dimension. So
Yeah.
clearly, it looks like it's working for him.
Yeah.
Where did you get that idea to work with a mental coach, and how's that helped?
Yeah, so I got uh my mental coach's name is Salt Garrison. My coach Vinny Lopez actually, made the arrangements. He knows Salt and made the arrangements for me to start working with him. And I think it was like a week or so after the fight, and then I started working with him every week since. And I've put in a lot of hours with him, and it's helped me tremendously. I feel like my thought process isn't even the same as what it was before. I feel like I'm a lot more grounded. I'm a lot more level. Yeah, it's just been very beneficial, and I think it's going to help tremendously, going forward in my career now.
Hmm. Well, yeah, the Dakota Bush fight was excellent. I'm sure that a decent amount of that can be attributed to, your mental coach and the work that you've done there,
Yeah,
as well as the physical work. Obviously, that's
yeah,
well documented, but
yeah,
the mental aspect doesn't always get talked about as much. So,
yeah,
one thing that I've always admired from you in your career is that you bounce back so well.
yeah,
You never have consecutive losses, and I think that you see a lot of times, people that come into the UFC, they might win their first, win their second, win their third, win their fourth, and they get on this streak, and then when they experience a loss deeper into their career, it's really tough for them to come back. And you see people go on these, 3 or 4 fight losing streaks and then get cut. Um,
yeah,
you've lost a few times in the UFC, but every time you've come back and you've beat your opponent the following time. Dakota Bush was another great example.
yeah,
Um, how do you bounce back so well? Because I think that's something that not every fighter has the mental, physical, emotional capacity to do.
yeah. So, for me, being active and like getting those live, real life, cage time uh is, for me, I feel like where you learn most of the things you need to learn to upgrade yourself, to level up, whatever you want to say. That live situation where that pressure, the real world happening of the fight, you can train as long as camp as you want, as many hours as you want, but like what matters is what happens in that live 15-minute fight, or 25, if it's a title fight or whatever. But so for me, like I said, I like to stay active, because as many of those live situations like as I can get, I feel like I learn, I grow, and I can adjust and take what I've learned from those fights, bring it with me into my training, make the adjustments, and go forward, and improve, and uh win the next one. You know what I mean? I've never in my life have lost two in a row, and I've never in my life, up until I got to the UFC, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. I've always had a streak. If I lost, get another streak going. So um you know before the UFC, I had four different, professional titles, all different promotions and states and everything. Like, when you do finally get to the UFC, it is like a reset. You know what I mean? Like, what you did before getting into the UFC doesn't really matter anymore. So I'm really taking these lessons and that I've learned in these fights, and adjusting, and adapting where I need to adapt. As far as, for me, the biggest thing was the mental approach to it. Physically, I always put in work. I always train hard. I always perform well in practice, and I believe fully in my abilities and skill set. So, excuse me, now that I have this new mental approach, I feel like everything's going to really start coming together. And I really determined to get a streak going, now in the UFC, and not keep doing this win one, lose one.
Right.
So yeah, like you said, is now I feel have the tools to really get a streak going and continue my rise. So
Right. Well, if you get a streak going, you'll probably get back to those 5 rounders,
yeah, yeah.
the main events. How many times? I'm just curious because you mentioned, that you learn a lot from your previous fights. How often or how much do you usually go back and watch a fight after it's done? I imagine it's numerous times.
Yeah. Yeah. I watch I watch my fights more than I watch, opponents' fights. I look for, the areas I need to improve. And you can't really see those things when you're doing it. You know what I mean? Like, so when I watch film, it's usually on myself. I need to keep my hands tighter. I need to do this. I need to do that. You know what I mean? I look for those type of things in areas in which I need to improve to up my chances of winning my next fight. And that's part of, like you were saying, I always bounce back quick. I really dive into my areas in which I need to improve, and then improve them and then come back. So
Yeah. Well, it's really critical that you keep improving. I'm sure you feel that
yeah,
in every division in the UFC, but the lightweight division in particular is very scary, to put it
yeah,
lightly. Um,
yeah. It's deep.
it is very deep, and there are big names and dangerous names all over the place. I mean, to
Yeah,
list a few: Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira, Tony Ferguson, Conor
yeah,
McGregor, Dan Hooker, Beneil Dariush, Donald Cerrone. I mean, and that's not even everybody that's in the top 10. So
yeah.
how difficult, and you haven't fought those guys yet, but how difficult is it to compete at 155? Because I feel like it is by far the deepest division in the UFC.
Yeah, it is, I believe, the biggest division in the UFC. Uh, it is what it is. It's a hard weight class, but it's a very, rewarding weight class. If you can shine in this weight class, that means you're a pretty solid fighter. You know what I mean? With it being the biggest division in the UFC, with most people in that weight class on the roster, yeah,
Mhm.
I believe that's correct. Anyways,
Yeah.
last I seen. So yeah, it says something if you're shining in that weight class. Obviously that's a goal of mine. I don't know anyone who comes into this and doesn't want to eventually be the champion. So obviously that's my goal. Um, being the top dog.
Yep.
So yeah, like I said, it's challenging. But it's also very rewarding.
So, amateur or professional, have you ever fought at a different weight class? And would you ever consider fighting at a different weight class? I don't know. I know that every fighter cuts a different amount of weight,
Yeah,
has, previously fought usually at different weight classes. They
yeah.
feel most comfortable at something. You're obviously competing every time at 155. Do you feel like you will always fight 155, or do you think that there's potentially a chance that you would move up to 170 or down to 145? We see a lot of 155ers either considering moving up or down.
Yeah, I definitely won't ever go down to 145. I have a hard enough time making 55, so that for sure won't ever happen. I have fought at 170 before. I've had multiple fights at catch weight, 60, 65 before. Um, you know, I'm ideally a lightweight, you know what I mean? I'm a little small for 70. Looking, for example, my teammate and good friend Neil Magny, he's 6'3", he cuts from almost 200 pounds.
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near that size. I'm 5'10". I cut from 180, 85 if I'm super overweight or something. But I would just be too small at 70 at the top level. If a situation comes up where I have an opportunity to compete at 170, whether it's a last minute replacement fill in type of thing, and I'm not opposed to that. I'll do that. But as far as like for my career, I plan on staying at 155.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, you definitely look good at 155. It's interesting. So you cut your 180, 185 walking around on a normal basis. When you get into fight camp, or when you get into fight week rather, a week out before the fight, how much weight do you normally have to cut? I always just find it so fascinating.
Yeah, it kind of depends. I go into fight week around 170 to like 68-ish, 67, it kind of just depends, but that's also, I start water loading, and obviously that's ups my weight a little bit going into fight week, but yeah, roughly, 15 or so pounds.
Intense, intense.
Yeah.
That's the one really difficult thing, and the one reason why I think it makes a lot of sense when like Joe Rogan and other guys talk about there being a division every 10 pounds. Um,
Yeah.
because if there was, a 165 and a 175 instead of a 170, uh,
Yeah.
it would be a lot more interesting to see guys come out of there and see who shines.
Yeah.
In your division, it's tough because if you're a bantamweight, to go up to featherweight is, 10 pounds, or to go down to flyweight is 10 pounds. For you to go up, you have to put on 15 pounds, which is, like you mentioned with your teammate and coach Magny, like that's
Yeah.
very different. That's
Yeah.
5 pounds makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're just frames are bigger at 70. You know what I mean? They're a little more dense. They're a little stronger. And to compete at that in that division, strength, I feel I could compete strength wise. It just it takes more out of you to control someone of that size. And I feel I could do it, but to be my most success would definitely be in the lightweight division. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, like I said, I would only go up, if it was necessary.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also something that people tend to do later in their career,
Yeah,
when the weight cuts get harder. Uh,
yeah,
you see a lot of people move up at that point. It makes more sense.
yeah.
That being said, you've been really, really active since you got into the UFC. I know you mentioned some minor injuries, but yeah, I've really admired the way that you stay active. And after your post-fight conference against Dakota Bush, you were adamant that you wanted to stay active more and you wanted to get back in there. I think you
Yeah,
said like June, July timeframe. Uh,
yeah.
have you heard anything about when you might be fighting next?
I haven't. I my manager said getting me on June would probably be pretty hard. So, uh, I'm 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 hoping July. Anytime in July. I like I said, I like to stay active. Like I said, I feel like adapt and learn best in the live fire. So I want to keep jumping into that fire, and I want to keep learning. I want to keep getting better. Um, like I said, I feel like you can only learn so much through training camp and whatnot. And training camp for me is uh, you know, obviously I'm training hard, but I'm comfortable. You're not in that live scenario. Um, and I like getting uncomfortable and in that live scenario and growing and learning. That's for me the best way to keep growing as a fighter. So yeah,
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any other way to,
yeah.
simulate that danger in that learning process. Um, so, okay, so no fight news yet. And I know you're not big on call outs. You said that, in one of your interviews as well. You really
Yeah.
don't, like to call guys out, but um, instead of, I mean, calling a guy out, is there a particular type of fighter that you'd like to test yourself with? Someone who's really good at
Um,
BJJ or wrestling, or, just an all out striker?
You know, I feel perfectly comfortable in all areas of a fight, wrestling, grappling, standing. So to me, it doesn't matter. I've fought a lot of, grapplers in my UFC career so far. So to maybe switch it up and get a striker or something, that'd be cool. But to me, it doesn't matter. I'll fight whoever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you fought not just grapplers, but I mean Olympic wrestlers.
Yeah,
Mark Madsen's.
yeah,
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. It'd be better to switch it up on the feet a little bit more. Uh,
yeah,
cool. So those are the 5 questions that I have. I have a couple of questions that I think will be fun and that I've always sort of wanted to ask UFC fighters and just get their get their feedback. I look at your Instagram, and of course, you have a beautiful dog, and you've got a fiance now. I know that you talked
yeah,
about the upcoming wedding.
yeah,
But aside from training and obviously spending time with your fiance and your dog, I saw your dog in the background, super cute.
yeah.
What else do you do in your spare time? Like what are your hobbies?
Just hanging out. Me and Neil like to ride our motorcycles a lot. We have street bikes, but we also have quads and dirt bikes. We'll go ride out in the mountains, and that's a lot of fun. Love doing that. Obviously, I like I like going hiking, and anything outdoors really. I play video games, quite a bit in my free time, so all that typical type of guy stuff, I guess.
Yeah. No, I saw that. I think you got the PS5 recently, right?
Yeah, I
Enjoying
did.
that.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah, well, Colorado is definitely the place to if you like outdoorsy
yeah,
stuff, whether you like hiking or skiing or whatnot, that's the
yeah,
place to do it.
for
Uh,
sure.
Very cool. So, what is your favorite meal? I know that you probably don't get to eat favorite meals a lot, especially when you're training for a fight, but
Yeah.
kind of let loose. What do you like to eat?
Like as far as cheap meal, I love like pizza, like most people. There's this place in Colorado called Pizza Louie, and that is probably my favorite pizza of all time. It is really good. I love, baked goods like cinnamon rolls, donuts. Those are like my favorite like sweet treats, type of stuff. Yeah, everyone loves a good burger, steak, all that good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I bet it tastes, all the better when you refrain from it for so long
Yeah,
and then let loose. Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
awesome. And then I know that you've stayed, pretty central to the, central U.S. For a while, Colorado, Iowa, Illinois.
Yeah.
If you had to sort of pick a spot on a map that you haven't been in the past, and you're just gonna live there for the rest of your life, where would you drop that pin? Where would you go?
Uh, like as far as for like when I'm done fighting,
Yeah, yeah.
or
No more fights. Yeah.
okay. I've never been to Hawaii, but I've heard it is absolutely beautiful. They have the mountains, they have the ocean. Uh, I'll go to Hawaii, check that out. Like I said, I've never been there, so and I've heard nothing but great things about it. So that would be cool, I think, to check out Hawaii.
Yeah, no, I've heard good things too, and you could
Yeah,
definitely sit around with some, in the future with some retired fighters, Max Holloway,
yeah,
Rachel Ostovich, and
yeah,
shoot the shit. So that's cool. Uh,
yeah.
all right, well, that's what I've got. Congratulations on the upcoming wedding. Best of luck in your
Thank
next
you.
fight, and
Appreciate it.
just can't wait to see you compete again, man. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Austin Hubbard, everybody.